Welcome back to Tranquility du Jour, nourishing conversations about living a full and meaningful life. This is episode 553. I'm your host, Kimberly Wilson, bringing you tranquility through this podcast since 2005. So next month, actually September, is our anniversary of this podcast. Anyway, today we are talking with the lovely Rea Frey about her tips for aspiring writers, the importance of wellness in the process, secrets to getting a book deal, and more. So I wanted to share a few things before we hear from Miss Rea about what is going on Tranquility du Jour wise. So a few things on the radar for fall. September 19th, save the date. That's our next free TDJ Live 1-hour masterclass. There's a link in the show notes, which can be found at kimberlywilson.com/553 to sign up. Also, our next virtual retreat. It's our final one of 2021. And it's a 3-hour adventure from the comfort of your home, just exploring creativity, movement, and reflection. And details, of course, also in the show notes. There's going to be the 5-week TDJ Lifestyle e-course that I released the first time last year. And this will be the only time it will be released this year. And there's a link to join the waitlist for that. And a link to join the waitlist for the TDJ Passholder Collective, which gives you access to everything all year long. And of course, that'll be for 2022. So again, you can join the waitlist for that. Links to all of this over in the show notes. All right. So I'm so excited to share today's podcast with you. And I think you're going to get lots and lots of great insights from it, especially for those of you who are aspiring writers or even just love thinking about the idea of writing and wellness and how they go together, because she does a beautiful blend of both. Okay. Rea is the CEO of Writeway and the multi-published, award-winning, best-selling author of 3 suspense novels and 4 nonfiction books. What started out as a simple writing coach side hustle based on referrals quickly scaled to a multi-6-figure business and landed 10 clients, top literary agents, and book deals in less than a year. She uses her 15 years in the publishing industry to simplify the information and offer it in a straightforward way. Whether you want to write a book, sell a book, or promote a book, Writeway assists and guides in the process. Simply put, she's the expert of all things book writing and book publishing. Welcome, Rea.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us about your writing journey. You've written quite a few books and you help others.
Absolutely. So, what a fun story. Where do I begin? So in a nutshell, I actually began my writing journey in college. I decided to, even though I was very academic, I was very into the athletic side of my life. I thought I might actually end up being an athletic trainer or going more that route. I ended up going to Columbia for creative writing. And I actually got a book published when I was 22 before I graduated college. And I was so excited. It was a traditionally published book. I was like, this is the thing that's going to take me places. I'm changing my life. And that experience was an absolute disaster. It was nothing more than what I consider a vanity press, which is basically a print-on-demand publisher. I never saw a dime from that book. It was very poorly done. It was never in a bookstore. And I remember just being so devastated by that experience that I actually stopped writing fiction, which is what my degree was in, for about 10 years. And I pivoted to nonfiction. And I took it upon myself to really start to learn about the industry, all of the things that I didn't know going into it, which I feel like that's kind of where most writers start, right? Like 80% of people want to write a book, but so many of us don't ever get there. Or when we do, we don't know what to do. So I was like, I'm going to learn everything I can. So I interned at a literary agency. I became a ghostwriter. I started editing. I really got involved in the industry side of things. And then I proceeded to get 4 nonfiction traditional book deals, which was great, right? Like, great, I'm writing these books, I'm getting paid to write these books. But what I didn't realize as a nonfiction author in the health and wellness space at that time, you really needed to be like a huge expert and have a really big platform. And while I was certified in nutrition at that time, I was a personal trainer for 15 years. I didn't understand what an author platform was. And this was back in like 2011, 2012, when the whole idea of social media and having an author platform and having a digital footprint wasn't as important as it is today. But I learned book by book, like, okay, I can write the book, but that does not translate to sales. Like, what am I missing here? Like, I can write and I can get a book published, but why aren't my books selling? And I was really falling into that stereotype of, yeah, you can write as a hobby, but you can't make money at writing. And that's what I grew up. I grew up with that model. I grew up with that belief. And it's really interesting that I chose a profession that is so riddled with stereotypes. So I wanted to break that mold. I wanted to like prove that I could make money as a writer and that I could have the kind of experience that I wanted. So again, I kind of like worked, was all in all facets of the writing industry. And it wasn't until the end of about 2016, 2017, that I had an idea for a book, a novel. And I was a little nervous about returning to fiction. I hadn't touched it in so long, but I got the idea for this book. I was in an airport, and I saw this mother-daughter exchange that would actually become the premise for my debut novel, Not Her Daughter. And I was working 3 jobs at that time and was just like, I want to write. I've always wanted to write novels. I got to make this happen. So I went home that very week. I quit 2 of my 3 jobs. I gave myself 8 weeks to write that novel. I wrote it in a month, landed an agent, got a 2-book deal with one of the biggest publishers in the country, landed another 2-book deal, landed a movie deal. Like, it was bananas. It was like seemingly overnight, even though it was like a close to, well over like a 15-year timeline to get to that point. But I decided this time I was going to approach it differently. I was announcing myself as a brand new writer because my first novel, I didn't really count that. Like, it didn't really make a splash. So I looked at this as my debut, but I looked at my book as a product this time, and I was going to approach it as a business. So I did decide to invest in a publicist. And in order to pay for that, I started a side hustle where I was really helping writers like with their goals and dreams, whether that was editing, ghostwriting, pitching to agents, pitching to publishers, writing nonfiction book proposals. People could just come to me and I would help them get their work out there. In the first year, it scaled to 6 figures, just like without me doing anything, just like no digital marketing efforts, nothing else than word of mouth. The second year, I did it again. I was like, wow, this could really be a legitimate business to help writers. So at the top of 2020, right before the pandemic hit, I decided to create Writeway, which really does help aspiring writers become published. My husband went all in with me, quit his comfy, cushy 6-figure job with W-2 income to come be the creative director. And then the pandemic hit, and I was like, we've ruined our lives. Like, what are we doing? Instead, the most amazing thing happened where our business flourished. And it flourished because I feel like a lot of people who have these dreams were like, if I don't do this right now, if I don't sit down and write this book, I will never, ever do it. So we helped in really starting in like 2018, 2019, 2020, about 80 to 90% of all of our clients landed top agents and book deals. We had some clients land 6-figure book deals. We had some clients whose books have now come out who've become bestsellers. And it has just been the most incredible thing to watch authors, whether they have a fiction idea, a nonfiction idea, come to us and for us to really empower them to make decisions about which publication path is right for them, what they're really getting into, understanding everything about this industry, because so many people feel like they're in the dark and don't know what's going on. So we really offer that information. We do it on our podcast. We do it with consulting. We do it with our clients. So it's been such an incredible journey because I'm still, I'm about to release my fourth book next winter, as a novelist myself, but then running a business for writers, I'm kind of on all sides of it. And I feel like there are a lot of gaps in the industry. There are a lot of issues in the industry that need to be fixed. And I'm so passionate about trying to be a disruptor and just giving authors the power to choose what's right for them and not picking a canned version of success that we've all been taught. You're not successful as a writer unless X, Y, or Z. I think we get to set the stage for that and what success looks like. And that's probably what I'm actually most passionate about in this business.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love your journey kind of with your own writing and then into the business. And then, of
Yeah.
course, like you're still doing your writing. And I love the statistic too that 80% of people want to write a freaking book. Yeah. I mean,
Yes.
so many people, I think, feel that there is a book in them. So, I'm going to ask quite a bit on like various tips, but I'm
Yeah.
curious, what would you say to those 80%, but who aren't writing, but it's like, I want to write, I've got this idea, I saw this mother-daughter in the airport. I've got this great storyline,
Totally.
or, I want to write my memoir, or I want to
Yes.
write a how-to, great nutrition. I don't know, like whatever.
Exactly. I mean, I think the first thing is you've really got to sit down and figure out why you want to write the book. Like we always start with what is your big why? If it's fiction, it's usually, you don't have, it's not like nonfiction. It's not like I'm solving a problem. I'm an expert in my space. Sometimes with fiction, it's just like you want to get the story down, but actually sitting down to write can be the hardest thing ever. I always joke that it's the one profession where we try to avoid the thing we're supposed to do at all costs. Like I will do anything. I will waste, people waste 4 hours to 6 hours on their phone every single day instead of sitting down to write. So what I would say to fiction writers and what I've found to be most helpful is to really carve out one focused hour where you're putting the phone away, you're turning your email notifications off, and you are sitting down to write. And it's what I like to call a fast draft, where you're always writing forward and you're gaining momentum. So set 1,500, like a 1,500 word count limit a day. That should take you no longer than an hour, but books are created by momentum on the fiction side of things. Now, nonfiction, it's a totally different thing. I get so many people who come to us with nonfiction ideas and they're like, oh, I've already written a book. Like, I want to sell it. To sell a nonfiction book, you actually start with the book proposal, which is a very strategic roadmap to what your book's going to contain. Now, this is so much more fun when people, I say fun, a lot of people don't think this is fun, but there's so much that goes into it. So we're looking at when we engage in a book proposal, we are clarifying what your book actually is, but we're figuring out who your readers are ahead of time, who your competitors are, who are actually going to become your allies in this process and really help you promote. We create a comprehensive marketing plan that follows you throughout an entire year of how you're going to sell your book before, during, and after launch. We do your chapter outline where we get so specific about what each chapter is going to contain before you ever even write your book. And then the coolest thing about this proposal is it really becomes a content strategy for other things in your brand or business. So you have content that you could use for blogs, for digital courses, for podcasts, for webinars. And it becomes just this like very robust living, breathing document. And for a lot of people, that's the bread and butter of our business. And when they come to us to engage in a book proposal, it is such a clarifying experience on what their book is actually going to be. It changes, I'd say 99% of the time. And so when they go to actually write their book, when they get a book deal, the writing is so much easier because they have like this very, very clear blueprint on what's going to happen. Now, I will say, say you're someone who wants to write a nonfiction book. It's in the health and wellness space. It's in the business space. Before you start writing, that's why the book proposal process is so important, but really figuring out like what publication path is right for you, because the traditional market is not getting a traditional book deal is not for everyone. And I always ask a couple of qualifying questions. Is your idea sellable? Do you have a specific niche? Because if you're writing a fitness book, good luck. Or a memoir, unless you're a celebrity, it's a really, really, really hard sell. Doesn't mean it's impossible, but it's important. And then we also look at the author platform. If you're coming to me and you have zero digital footprint, and I'm not talking about followers, but I'm talking about an engaged community, and it can be a small engaged community, but you need to have a group of people who are going to want to buy whatever it is that you're selling. So that is so important. Those two are kind of like the qualifying questions that we ask. And then we really look at timeline. For the traditional world, by the time you get a book deal, you are looking at 12 to 24 months before your book comes to market. A lot of nonfiction authors are like, no, I need this book for my brand or business. I just need it as like a lead generation magnet. And so in that case, self-publishing or hybrid publishing might actually be the better option. So then we get into like what each of those looks like, you know, the differences between them, how you make money. And we have all of those conversations. But I would say, you know, if you're one of the 80% who wants to write a book, get really clear on why you want to write the book in the first place, what publication path is right for you. And then from there, you can kind of figure out like your path to get there.
Yeah. And I love the reminder. I mean, isn't it horrific that we spend 6 to 7 hours a day on our phone?
My God. I mean, I want to like, I was born in the wrong era. Like I want to go back to handwritten letters, carrier pigeons, like landline telephones. I mean, I know technology is so great. Obviously, like we're able to do this, but it has not only stolen like creativity, I think, but processing. So much of being an artist is processing. So for me, like I take 45-minute walks without my phone. And that's when I actually come up with my ideas or fix some sort of issue in my head that I figure out on the page. But we don't have that space anymore to think, to dream, to wander. And instead we're just filling it with like scrolling and so much information that I think it's so easy not to be creative or to say like, oh, I just don't have time, when we have plenty of time. We just put our attention where we're not getting a return on our investment.
Well, and you know, then we get the updates from Apple every Sunday or screen time, and you're like, no.
Like, no. I'm like, is it been leaking? Like, is it just on, you know, doing something when I don't know? I mean, it's horrific. It's so horrifying that so much of our lives are tethered to this machine that, you know, is listening to what, I know everybody says that, but like you could be talking about something and then you pull up Instagram and there's an ad for what you were talking about. Like, come on, people, we gotta get some of our privacy back. I think it's pretty creepy.
Well, one random thing about that is so interesting is I was telling my partner about, you know, a friend who their dog had choked on something. The dog's fine, but it was like this really scary experience, right? Mm-hmm. He pulls up, and it must have been Instagram because he doesn't do Facebook. And there is an ad for a contraption that you can buy for if your kid chokes, you know? And I was like,
that's
weird, right?
That's
like
insane. Yeah.
There's no way. I mean, we don't have kids. We're not looking for choking kid paraphernalia, right?
Yeah, right.
But I mean, the fact that we had just had this conversation, that's like, so there's just no way, you know, that it couldn't have been listening. So weird.
Oh yeah. It's listening. 100% it's listening. Yeah.
Oh, that's a whole other tangent, right?
Oh, I know. Oh my gosh. I could talk forever about that. Yep.
But I do think it is really important to keep in mind. It's like, because so many of us can feel like we don't have enough time. But you're right. It's not as much time as it's creative space. Because if you think about it, okay, it's a very different mindset and headspace to doom scroll than it is to write. And so, you know, I hear from so many people, it's like the evening right before bed, they're like, I'm not in a space to like do my creative work, but I can scroll. So it's like how to, you know, because it's like all the, or, you know, in the past, right? Or still, you know, it's watching TV or, you know, other things that fills your mind with other people's ideas, but it's kind of all you have the capacity for. So what would you say is the answer to that? I mean, I think it's like we make sure we're doing it during our kind of prime time.
100%. So number one, it's the reason we scroll is because we've gotten so increasingly used to scrolling. Like if you spend 4 to 6 hours, 6 to 7 hours on anything daily, you're going to become so good at that skill. So we have like trained ourselves. That is like that little hit of dopamine, that little, it truly is a drug. And we talk about that. I talk about that all the time, but it really is. So it's really figuring out like how to block out some protected time away from technology when you feel most creative. Now, for some people, you talk to so many different artists, creatives, and some are very, very diligent. Like I get up, this is, from 7 to 8, 7 to 9, 6 to 7. That is my protected time. It's what I do every single day. I sit my butt in the chair and I write. For me, and I've tried everything. I've tried every single thing that you can imagine. I don't always feel the same level of creative inspiration at the same time every day. And for me, that's fine. But I make sure to carve out that time. I'm a very fast writer. So for me, an hour to 2 hours a day, I can really get a lot done. But that doesn't happen every day. Sometimes that creative time is going for my walk and processing, or is doing yoga, or is breathing and meditating and just like dropping into that space where I'm unencumbered with technology. So I think for some people, figure out what you're motivated by. If you're motivated by word count, which I'm a very like deadline oriented person. I love like, boom, I can check this off. I hit this word count. Then do that. And also like creating the environment where you want to do it. So, if you're trying to write and be creative in like an office type space, or your kids are driving you crazy or whatever, it doesn't feel like a great space for you, create a space or a little corner of your universe, candles, good music, like a cup of coffee or tea, whatever makes you feel really motivated to drop in. For me in 2020, I got so annoyed with my family and with all of us being on top of each other that I spent $10,000 on a tiny home that I dropped on the back of our acre lot, and I turned it into my writing studio. That was a dream of mine forever. It was a big investment, but for me, it was like my sanity that mattered. So now I get to have that separate space. It has, plants and crystals and candles, and like, it just feels so good in there. So when I go in, I can drop in. It is my creative only zone. I try not to take a lot of calls out there. I don't do a lot of work out there. I want it for my creativity. So I think environment has everything to do with it. It's just like anytime you pick up your phone, you could be picking it up to do one thing, and 20 minutes later, you're doing all the things, you're scrolling all the things, because that is what you're just conditioned to do that. So if you can condition yourself to sit down in the same space, in a space that you love, and that will trigger creativity for you, I think that's like a cool hack. It's just like retraining your brain, like to do what matters to you, if it really does matter.
Well, and I love this because I think these are some great tips on like, okay, how do we actually get the book written, and starting with the why, such a good idea. And this focused time. What about kind of, especially since you've helped so many people land a book deal and get an agent, what are some of your secrets there that you would share with our listeners? I mean, kind of my biggest hack that I always hear, and I wonder if this is what you would recommend, but, for finding an agent, to even know, because there are so many of them, but to go through books that you kind of like the vibe, and you see who they think, and you reach out to them.
100%.
Is that still okay?
Yeah, that's a great hack. And that's why, like in our competitive analysis, in our book proposals, and this can be fiction or nonfiction, we do find like, who are the agents who are publishing or who are representing similar books? And we try to add that to our list. But what we actually do for our clients is we pitch to agents on their behalf. So we have an arsenal of top literary agents that we've really curated these amazing relationships with. So when we hand them a project, they will actually review it and get back to us. It's not like, I used to be the writer that would send 50 queries to agents and then just like never hear anything back. So we've really perfected our pitch process, where it definitely starts with a very top-notch query letter that really will get your foot in the door. Then we curate a list of appropriate agents. It's usually around 15 agents. We start with the ones we know the best, but we only submit to 5 agents at a time. And the reason we do that is because we really like to get feedback. If all 5 agents pass on it, they say no, but they give us similar feedback like, hey, this is really great, but their author platform really needs work. Then that author knows what they have to do. We can kind of like retool, or they can go off and like boost their author platform a little bit. And then we come back to the table and can pitch to the next round of agents. We also will pitch directly to editors at like mid-size publishers or smaller publishers that don't need, they just don't need like an agent. But I would say if you're doing this on your own, definitely study the market. Look at who is publishing in your space. If you pay $25 a month to Publishers Marketplace, you also have access to every agent imaginable. You can see what deals they've made, how many they've made in the last 12 months, if they're doing big deals, who they're doing them with, so you can get the intel on who might be appropriate for you. And the biggest lesson in all of this is I am such a stickler about clients not saying yes to an agent, even if they're interested, unless they feel absolutely comfortable with them, unless they ask the right questions. As writers, we just want to be picked. We want to get a yes, but it's actually the other way around. You as the writer are picking the agent. You are picking the publisher, and it is your material and your career. So when you say yes to someone, you need to make sure that that is the right advocate for you, for this book, for your future career. So we really coach our writers on what questions to ask. Sometimes we're on the call with the client and the agent to make sure that it is the right fit, because it really matters. It's one of the most important relationships. And I think it's harder to get an agent than it is to get a book deal, quite frankly. So we want to make sure that that's the right fit. So really do your homework, figure out like what query letters work, what query letters don't work. Reach out to even other authors in your space. You'd be so shocked at how many authors will be willing to make an introduction. Like, here, I'll introduce you to my agent or my editor. It's such a generous space, but you have to make sure that you are reaching out only to the people that actually fit the genre of your book, and not just, you're not just like sending out pitches to people that aren't the right fit. So it really is a matchmaking skill, and it does require some research and a little bit of heavy lifting, but it's one of the most important pieces of this entire thing. It is such a long game, but all you need is one yes. And I think if you can keep that in your mind, there are thousands and thousands of agents. Chances are there's one out there who is the right fit for you.
And any kind of secrets with regard to publishers? I mean, I guess it's really kind of in the agent's hands, but do you encourage people to kind of have their eye on like their ideal?
Yeah.
Like I've always thought Chronicle has the cutest
books.
I love Chronicle.
One of our clients is like this close to signing with Chronicle. And I'm like, oh my God, I love Chronicle books so much. So yeah, really making a running list. Who are your dream publishers? Because then you can find the agents that have like the relationships with those editors. The editor at the publishing house is who actually purchases your book. And, we could get into that whole process, but really, come up with your dream list. You want to make sure that you are landing in a place that you're excited about. But my biggest piece of advice, like we all have these, like, I want to sign with the big four. Like I'm with one of the big four. You need to talk to authors who are either with that imprint or with that publisher to find out what their experience has been like. Find authors that have published in the last year or two in your space and have a conversation with them. You'd be so shocked at like just sending. I always say on like, if you're on Instagram or wherever you are in the digital space, send an audio message to that author rather than like a long direct message. I always hear back if I just send an audio message. I think it's so much more personable, but really talking to people who are currently with a publisher, you would be shocked at like how sometimes you have this idea of a dream and what it's going to be like. And, oh God, if I sign with this publisher, my life's going to be made. Then you start talking to authors who've like not had great experiences. And you think, oh, wait, maybe a smaller publisher would be right for me. Maybe I actually want more attention. And that's the thing too. What kind of relationship do you want to have in this space? Sometimes with smaller publishers, you can have more personal attention. You have more say-so, you have more input. At the big house with the big boys, sometimes you can get lost in the shuffle. Sometimes you're the last to know things. And so I think you have to figure out, again, it goes back to your big why, like what is important to you in this process? Is it just having like one of the big, like I'm published by, Penguin Random House. If that's important to you, great. At least you know that. But maybe it's actually not when you start to dig into your actual goals and why you're doing this in the first place. So I think it always just starts with the author and really digging deep to figure out what's most important.
I love that, which again is coming back kind of to your why, right?
It all comes back to the why.
Have you read that book by Simon? Is it Simon? His last name starts with an S. Sinek or
Simon
something?
Sinek.
Sinek. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
I
love him. Yep.
Yeah. Such a good book. So, a little shift, but one of the things you talked about is during 2020, getting your little she shed, so to speak, your tiny house. Love the she shed. So let's talk about kind of wellness and how that plays into all of this. And as we were talking before we started recording, you mentioned ice baths and infrared saunas and setting up a gym in your garage. And so what have you found, particularly over these past 14 months of kind of craziness that has helped you find like more tranquility within it all?
Absolutely. So 2020 was such a gift to me, actually, and to my family from a holistic health and wellness perspective. I think in our society, we are a very reactive society in how we approach health. We don't really pay attention until something goes wrong, or, we're looking for the trend, the fad, the quick fix, and just are very unconscious about our health. And I've kind of been that way, but from a health perspective, like I just always, I was a personal trainer for 15 years. I was a gymnast for 13 years. I was a competitive boxer for 5 years. I was into CrossFit. So I was like, go, go, go. Like the harder it is, the better the outcome. But I really wasn't feeling great. And at the top of 2020, I'd been a gym rat my whole life. I've been lifting weights since I was like 13 years old. And the gym, of course, closed. And I was like, I've never not gone to a gym my entire adult life. Like even when I was pregnant, it was 6 days a week doing all the things I probably shouldn't have done. So I panicked, but then I had the most amazing thing happen. I was working out one day. This was before we had converted our garage. And I was just like, we had some kettlebells and stuff. And my back went completely out, like unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. It was actually more painful than labor. Like I couldn't move. I couldn't sit. I couldn't stand. And I was forced to be still for the first time ever, really. And so I immediately started reevaluating everything. I had been living in survival mode for so long, constantly stressed, new business owner, workaholic, my daughter's homeschooled, I'm with my husband, we're working together, everything that we knew before had just kind of like literally come to a standstill. And so I took it upon myself to start implementing all the things that I'd been talking about forever that I know I needed to do, but hadn't. So that looked like, incorporating different types of movement. So more yoga, more Pilates, less lifting, and really focusing on like recovery, functional movement, mobility, but more than anything, just listening to my body. If I got up one day, like, oh, I'm supposed to do biceps and back, but I don't feel like doing that today, then I was actually like tuning into what I wanted to do. But the biggest change for both of us, for my husband and myself, came with breath work. So we, breathe all day, every day, but I am a very chest, breathing, high heart rate, like go, go, go. I'm in my fight or flight all day. So I'm in my parasympathetic nervous system. My sympathetic nervous system all day long, sympathetic, boo, 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 go, go, go. And so I started implementing different breathing tactics and to drop me into my parasympathetic nervous system and just relax, like start to really slow it all down. And it's interesting for my husband, he got certified in something called XPT breath work. his heart rate, like he's been an athlete his whole life. His heart rate is in the like 30s. I'm like, you might want to go get that looked at. Like you're dead. But so for him, he does Wim Hof. He needs a lot of like super intense breathing, like really, really, really intense breathing. For me, I found that I need things to just slow my system down. So the thing we started incorporating is the moment we wake up at different times, that's fine. The first like 30 to 40 minutes, we actually have a breath practice that we do. And that's different every single day. He does his thing. I do mine, but I really tune in to my body and see what I need. Do I want to be energized today? Do I want to calm myself down today? And that is a non-negotiable part of the day. So that is the first thing I do every morning, not because I have to, but because I want to. And then it's usually dropping into some sort of 15-minute meditation. I do like some bouncing to clear out my lymph, get me ready for the day. I do gratitude journaling and then start my day. But the breath work, more than anything, more than meditation, more than changing my movement, has made such a difference. And then we did spring for an infrared sauna, which we'd been watching it like a hawk. We got it on sale for like an amazing price. And we put that in our garage when we converted it to a gym. And then we got this like 100-gallon container for ice baths. And so we really do the cold hot therapy. Now that's very trendy right now. And you can definitely overdo it where you like harm yourself. But as humans, we have acclimated to temperatures that are just, we live in air conditioning, we live in heat. We're not really exposed to extreme temperatures in either way. So exposing yourself to hot and exposing yourself to cold has so many medicinal benefits. And I've noticed such a difference just for myself and doing the hot cold. One of the biggest tips for people, like if you don't have either one of those things, at the end of your shower in the morning, turn it cold. And I know everyone hates cold water, but turning it cold for 2 minutes, you can start with 30 seconds, work up to 2 minutes. But it's like a reset for your body. And it is so good. And it's something that you can do every single day. Like the cold, I love so much more than the hot actually now, because it's such a shock to the system, but it's really pretty amazing.
Yeah, I've always heard about, the cold being so good for, I don't know, I've seen all the like Instagrams of Madonna and her ice baths,
Yep.
But it's like great for injuries, right?
Yes,
so, but even just hearing you say that, I'm like, I've got the chills.
It's cold.
So
I know.
funny.
Yeah. It's because we have acclimated to different temperatures. Now I live in Nashville where, we used to live in Chicago and we love cold weather. We're actually freaks and like cold weather, but it's like 90 degrees here 9 months out of the year, it feels like. So my base temperature has, I'm like, oh God, it's 70 degrees. I'm cold. So that's why the cold therapy too really helps to kind of reset us where we're supposed to be and bring us back more to that baseline. So yeah, like playing around with that. Everyone's like, ooh, no, could never be in cold water. Can't do it, but you really can. And it's just, you notice a difference, I think pretty instantly in how you feel.
It's funny, yeah, for listeners who have never done that. I remember I went to a camp growing up that only had cold water. I mean, that's torture, right? But anyway, it's like, so I survived it. And I do remember, I remember it being pretty intense, but it's one of those things where it's like, it is possible. And I just read a book, Wintering by Catherine May. It's a great book. I think I'm getting her name correct, but Wintering. And she talks about how I think she lives in England and how she goes and swims, in the cold, and like the icy cold water, and it's just like, oh my God, but it's a thing. So
it's a thing. It's pretty popular.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, my last question for you is the name of this podcast, of course, is Tranquility du Jour. And so I'm curious, how are you currently finding tranquility in your everyday?
Oh, I love that question. This is going to sound really cliche and probably stereotypical, but I have really incorporated baths at the end of the day. So I do Epsom salt, some essential oils. I have these amazing candles that have like crystals in them. And I put on either quantum physics or like quantum music with the binaural beats, or manifestation music. There's like so many playlists you can find on Spotify. I grab a book, I get in that water and like drown out the world. Like my daughter's not allowed to come in, my husband's not allowed to come in. And it is just the nicest gift to myself. And I know that like everyone's like, oh, self-care goes so beyond a bath. But for me, it is just one of the best parts of my day where I feel so tranquil, so at peace. Also the same thing with the morning, like the morning breath work, the morning meditation. I go out to my studio and do that. And again, I set that environment. I put on that very tranquil music. I'll light a candle. Sometimes I'll do like tarot cards, like just fun, just really dropping myself in at the beginning of the day and then making sure I have that peaceful element at the end of the day. So it doesn't matter how stressful or crazy the middle of the day is, I can cap my day at the beginning and at the end. And for me, it's just like I can breathe and relax. And it's just, I so look forward to that bath at the end of the day.
Baths are the best. I think they are quintessential, like necessary. I really try not to ever rent like an Airbnb or a hotel that does not have a bathtub.
Oh my gosh. And we've only been in our house for 2 years, but we were in rentals forever because we were city people in Chicago and just rented. And I just never had a good bathtub. And I was like, I have to have a good bathtub. And I still don't have the amazing, like, you see in the multi-million-dollar homes, that's goals that's on my list. But my bath, like in our bath that we have, I don't allow anyone to take showers in there. We take showers in our other shower so it doesn't get gross. I'm like, this is reserved for bath time only. And it's just been so great. It's such a reflective, contemplative place to be at the end of every day too. And I think our natural state, like we should be in water. Like it's such an amazing kind of return to, again, our baseline, who we are as human beings. And it's such a nice way to end the day.
It's like baptismal almost.
It is. It completely is. It's like a religion. Yeah, it's a religious experience.
It is a religious experience. And what's funny is I recently got back into town. I was just gone for a few days, but when I came back, I was like, okay. So I did my little online order of like things I needed to have delivered. I'm like, okay, spinach, arugula, green juice, bath salts, Epsom bath salts.
Oh my gosh. If I'm out of bath salts, I get so pissed. Like I'll like sprinkle sea salt in there or something. Like, why don't we have like just a huge bulk order of bath salts? Cause it makes such a difference. It's so lovely.
Such a difference. And of course it's like Whole Foods. So they're like, oh, well, maybe you want this one. I'm like, well, maybe I do. So I got like rose, lavender and eucalyptus. I'm like, okay, so I have these 3 big bags of Epsom salts, but I was like, that's as essential as spinach, It
is. So it is as essential as spinach.
Well, thank you so much, Rea. It's been a treat to be with you today.
So appreciate it. Loved it.
Thank you, as always, for inviting me and my guest into your day. If you would like to find Miss Rea, you can see her over on Instagram. There is a link in the show notes, her website, Writeway, and her podcast, which is also called Writeway. And there's a link to that in the show notes. Now, if you are not part of the TDJ Insiders Facebook group, there is a link to request to join. Would love to have you over there with us. This month, we are reading Burnout. Also, there's a link to sign up for Love Notes, which have been put on hold until September. So if you would like to begin receiving those, would love to share invites, inspiration, and more. Also, browse my 6 books and planner. Link to that in the show notes, along with Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all that good stuff. And of course, the TDJ clothing line, which is vegan, locally made, eco-friendly fashion, seasonless because you can wear it year-round, and we have a few new designs this season. And finally, if you have a moment to share a review of this podcast on Apple Podcasts or whatever subscriber you're listening through, would be so grateful. Also, if you have a moment to share a review of any of my books on Amazon or Goodreads, would also be super duper grateful. All right, I wish you a delicious, delightful week ahead. And thank you again for joining me and Rea as we discuss writing and wellness.